Today we're discussing a recent Jubilee episode where 4 vegans and 4 meat eaters were challenged to see if they could find middle ground. We're going to respond to the worst meat eater moments, analyze which vegan talking points were persuasive, cover some mistakes the vegans made, and create a strategy vegans can use for this format in the future. I've also talked to people who were on this episode to give you a behind-the-scenes scoop. If you're not familiar with Jubilee, they're YouTube's largest game show channel that I've spent way too many hours watching. Seriously, the week I discovered Jubilee, I did not do much else. There's something so addictive about how they bring people with opposing views together and pit them against each other in an intellectual free-for-all. And if you're not familiar with me, my name is Natalie. I'm a former degenerate turned animal rights advocate, and I've spoken to tens of thousands of people about animal rights. Since Jubilee regularly invites vegans on, it's safe to assume that if you're watching this, you might be on there one day. And when that happens, I want you to be prepared. If you haven't watched the episode, the basic format is that there's a prompt and a circle. And if you agree with the prompt, you step into the circle to argue for your position. Eventually, the circle is open to the dissenters, and there's a free-for-all conversation about the prompt. It's interesting this episode was called Vegans vs. Meat Eaters because these were not ordinary meat eaters. Bella, aka Steak and Butter Gal, is an ex-vegan turned carnivore. Anne is a raw carnivore, which is disgusting. There's an avid hunter, and then one normal meat eater who I think works for Jubilee. The vegans aren't normal vegans either. Zoe's an accomplished factory farm investigator. Torre is a fitness influencer. Mason, who I pretended to eat while I was dressed like a bug once, is a full-time advocate for PETA. And I don't know much about Brooklyn, but I think she did an excellent job. And this isn't a normal debate because of the editing power Jubilee had over the final product. The actual debate was over 4 hours, but they edited it down into a little over 1. Other vegans who have reacted to this have been saying that the vegans should have said this or that, but the reality is that they probably said all of those things, they just didn't make it into the final cut. Throughout this video, I'm going to highlight ways we can outsmart Jubilee's editing team to make sure that our key messages make it into the final version. But I want to start this discussion by talking about the biggest barrier the vegans face throughout this episode, which is, of course, Bella, Steak and Butter Gal. Before the camera started rolling, she was rehearsing her lines with her husband, which makes me think that she's playing a character rather than sharing her authentic opinions. This inauthenticity really shines with all the lies she tells throughout this debate. Right away, she tells her unhinged anecdote about how veganism destroyed her health.
When I was vegan, I actually lost my period. So I was no longer fertile. I had extreme skin issues, psoriasis, cystic acne. I had also mental health issues. I used to be a classical pianist, and I studied at Juilliard for 2 years. Yeah, so I just remember going on stage and I couldn't remember the pieces that I was supposed to perform.
She even uses fear-mongering to convince people that they can't have children while on a vegan diet. Even though anecdotes are on the bottom of the evidence hierarchy, they're persuasive because people suspend disbelief when they're listening to stories. That's why grifters continuously rely on anecdotes. Here are just a few of the weird things Bella lies about. She says she doesn't eat dairy.
Firstly, you don't know what I'm eating in my carnivore diet. I don't drink breast milk from cows. I actually do not eat dairy right now because it inflames me.
Even though her Instagram handle is Steak and Butter Gal and features videos of her downing raw milk. She claims she doesn't buy factory farmed meat even though she shops at Costco. Now, this lie may be unintentional because about 75% of meat eaters do believe that they buy ethical meat, even though over 99% of animal products come from factory farms. But even though people think that, Costco still seems like a stretch. Bella admitted on a podcast that she didn't do the vegan diet correctly.
Before I went carnivore though, just some history, I was actually vegan, plant-based, whole foods plant-based. Actually, I did not eat any processed vegan foods, none of the fake meat stuff. I also did not supplement.
So she admits to not consuming any fortified foods or supplements on her vegan diet, meaning she was not consuming any B12 from her diet or vitamin D.
But here she is acting insulted every time the vegans even mildly question her experience.
For you to discredit my own experience,
yeah, but that's your own experience, right?
Diet,
you can't just
6 years of
assume
vegan
that
diet.
eating animals
are you saying that I did it wrong?
And I think that's what makes it so hard to respond to. It's difficult to call someone out and expose them as a liar without setting them off and looking insensitive. The vegans did bring up scientific evidence about plant-based diets, as well as the fact that anecdotes aren't reliable, but a lot of that was unfortunately cut out. I've been thinking about how to respond to Bella most effectively all week, and this is the best I could come up with. Vegan diets are similar to lifting weights in that they're proven to be healthy, but you have to do it right. If you lift heavy weights and your form is off, you're going to get injured. But that doesn't mean lifting weights is inherently bad. It's important to set the record straight about vegan diets, and there's absolutely no evidence other than anecdotes that people need to consume animal protein. If you're unable to function on a vegan diet, it's a clear sign that you either have a nutrient deficiency or a mental health disorder, and you need to go to a doctor, not start mainlining butter. Another question they could have asked her is, if it weren't for the health aspect, let's say if you found out that you could be optimally healthy as a vegan, would you do it? This question gets a sense for how they feel about animal rights and refocuses the conversation on ethics where it belongs. Now I want to cover some mistakes the vegans made, and you might be making one right now if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you are subscribed, go ahead and give this a like, otherwise I'm going to cry myself to sleep. I want to make it clear that I think the vegans did an incredible job. They all spoke eloquently about animal rights, and Zoe was especially a highlight for me.
And you say, that we have the power as humans to raise animals for food and to farm them. We also have the power not to do that. We have the power to treat them with kindness and compassion. And I am a factory farm investigator, a slaughterhouse investigator.
The average person watching this has to at least respect someone who's rescued 1,000 animals from factory farms. I also loved how Mason continued to bring the conversation back to the choices that we make every single day.
Animals are the same, all animals are the same, and especially animals that you kill. To humans, in all the ways that really matter, they feel pain. They experience joy, they have families, and you are taking their life away from them when you have other options available and you don't have to make that choice.
Any criticism here is to make the vegans stronger and more strategic in the future so we can finally bring down the meat industry and achieve animal liberation. This is what I wish the vegans had done differently. Let's start with what they're wearing. It's impossible to edit out someone's shirt, so wearing a shirt with a message is an easy win. Mason and Torre did this well, and I do wish Torre hadn't been wearing a shirt at all, but I think the Rethink Protein message goes great with his biceps. I like that Mason's had a message, but it's a little small and hard to read, so something clearer could have been better. The best message, in my opinion, would be watch Dominion 2018 on YouTube, because it directs people to the footage that a lot of people, like myself, need to see before they seriously have the drive to go vegan. You can even mention your shirt throughout the episode to increase the chances that people will watch it. One thing I would have loved to see from the vegans is for them to play against the stereotypes that people already have of vegans. One stereotype is that veganism is a cult and we all think the same, and unfortunately that's kind of how it came across. The vegans shared opinions on most of these prompts, which makes sense but isn't optimal. The worst part of the entire episode was the first 5 minutes where there was the prompt, "Animals are put on Earth to be eaten by humans." This is obviously not a statement vegans would agree with, so the meat eaters were able to dominate the stage for a painful 4 minutes. When those meat eaters were unchallenged, they were able to frame the conversation by making meat seem natural and necessary. Next time, we should step into the circle and say something like this. About 80 to 100 billion land animals are slaughtered for food every year. They're forcibly impregnated, mutilated without anesthetic, kept in cages so small they can barely move. They never get to see sunlight until the day they're sent to a slaughterhouse where they're killed in brutal ways like gas chambers. Obviously, these animals are here on Earth to be eaten by humans, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. With that statement, you guarantee some facts about animal farming are included from the very beginning. And Jubilee would have to show that part because they have to show a vegan who agrees with that prompt. I'd have liked to see a vegan frame the entire debate through the lens of how oppressors have justified oppression throughout history by claiming that it's nice, necessary, and natural, even though it's not. That way the viewer will have something to look for throughout the entire episode and ideally be able to see through it. You could even continue to bring it up throughout the debate so that editors have to include it because it's a narrative thread. Since the entire series is called Middle Ground, I assume the editors are specifically looking for sections where the two sides agree. This is another reason we needed more diversity of thought. One opportunity to show that was at the prompt, I can see myself switch to the other side. Look, I know that as a vegan, the idea of eating a dead animal probably really grosses you out, but disagreeing with this prompt makes you look dogmatic and stuck in your ways. People respect others who are willing to change their minds in light of new evidence. I wish a vegan had gotten in there and said this: I would totally switch to the other side if someone could prove that animals don't feel pain or that we need to eat them in order to be healthy. Also, there are new technologies like lab-grown meat and precision fermentation, and I definitely want to at least try them. I stopped eating meat because I respect animals, not because I don't like the taste. There, you've made a logical case for veganism and helped normalize new technologies like lab-grown meat. There is one exception to always wanting to have a vegan in the circle, and that's when this prompt came up: vegans are better than meat eaters. Since people constantly accuse vegans of feeling morally superior, I think it's important to go against that at all costs. Yes, we would give up the opportunity to be the only ones in the circle, but I'm willing to take that loss to avoid alienating the audience. I'm also a little salty because I've met so many vegans who are absolutely terrible people. Yes, I've met lots of amazing vegans and plenty of atrocious meat eaters, but the terrible vegans are just really, really bad. You might say that the terrible vegans would be even worse if they ate meat, and that might be true, but I still think we should avoid judging meat eaters because we don't know their background. Some meat eaters have never met a vegan, they might not know you can be vegan. We live in a society that actively discourages people from thinking about animals, and culture is one hell of a drug. I'd rather we put the blame on the meat industry, who spends billions of dollars brainwashing people, rather than on the people that they've brainwashed. If you do want to say something about vegans being better, try to frame it in terms of your current and past self. I don't think vegans are inherently better than meat eaters, but I do think I'm a better person now than I was when I ate meat. These days, I don't just think about how my actions affect animals, but I think about how they affect humans, and I try to take actions that are going to make the world a better place. One nitpick I have is this argument Zoe used that absolutely drives me crazy, but I won't talk about it here because I wrote about it in my newsletter, which is free. You can sign up for it, link in description. The last thing I'm going to critique is how the vegans said they wouldn't quit veganism even if it jeopardized their health.
I imagine myself letting myself die before I ate an animal.
That's okay. That's where we
felt
disagree.
like a sink in my gut, because it's like, you really don't value your life enough.
No, because
to
I'm not a
choose your
human
life?
supremacist.
I admire their dedication and commitment, but that could alienate meat eaters in the audience and make the vegans look unreasonable. At least one vegan should have said this: since veganism is about minimizing animal exploitation as far as practicable and possible, if multiple doctors told me I had to eat animal products, I would consider doing so. However, I would still try to minimize harm by choosing animals that we're not sure if they're sentient, like oysters and mussels. Overall, my critiques are small, and I think the vegans absolutely crushed it. While the meat industry may have billions of dollars to spread their message, we have something more powerful, which is the truth about what happens to animals. Whether you're a veteran activist or just starting your journey,
Everyone's journey.
remember that every conversation matters. Animals need us to be their voice, to speak up strategically and unapologetically, and to never stop working toward a pro-animal future. What did you think about this Jubilee episode? What did you think about my critiques? Let me know down below, and if you want to support my work, please join my Patreon. Otherwise, I will see you next time.